Sagittarius, letting go of guilt. A journey of self-forgiveness and healing. A moment in life when we are called to confront the heavy burden of guilt. The feeling of unfinished business, things left unsaid, and actions left undone. When we lose someone as precious as a mother, this burden can feel even heavier. Perhaps in the quiet of your heart, there are questions that have been lingering for some time. Did I do enough? Did I say the right words? Was I there for her when she needed me the most? These questions can fill the space where your mother once stood, leaving you with a haunting sense of what could have been. But today, I am here to tell you that healing begins by letting go of that very guilt. Your mother, wherever she may be, does not want you to carry this weight. She never asked for perfection. She only wanted your love, your presence, and your heart. Now is the time for you to begin a new journey. A journey where forgiveness starts with you. It's time to forgive yourself and embrace the peace and freedom that you so deserve. In this video, we will walk through the process of releasing guilt and learning that love, not perfection, was always enough. It's time to stop holding yourself to impossible standards and start embracing the truth. You did your best with what you had, and that love was more than enough. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom, where I, Sophia, will continue to guide you on your spiritual journey. Together, we'll explore healing, self-empowerment, and emotional growth. Let's begin this healing journey step by step as you move towards freedom from guilt. Gate 1. The unanswered questions. Guilt for what wasn't said or done for your mother. Sagittarius, the weight of guilt after a loss often comes from the unanswered questions that haunt us in the quietest moments. It's like a constant hum in the background reminding you of the things you feel you should have said, should have done, or should have been. When it comes to losing someone as dear as a mother, this feeling intensifies, creating an ache that only grows with time. After her passing, you might find yourself asking, did I do enough for her? Did I tell her I loved her enough? Did I truly show her how much she meant to me? These are questions that we all ask ourselves when we lose someone close, and when that person is your mother, the guilt seems all the more powerful. Perhaps you replay moments from the past, going over every conversation and every interaction, searching for signs that you could have been better, that you could have given more, that you could have somehow fixed things before it was too late. But this process only serves to keep you trapped in the past, fighting battles that can never be won. The truth, Sagittarius, is that these questions, while natural, only prolong the suffering. They keep you tethered to a moment that cannot be changed. What if you could release them? What if, instead of asking yourself what you could have done differently, you could embrace the truth that love, in all its imperfection, was always enough? Love is not about getting everything right. It's not about perfect words or actions. Love is about being present, being authentic, and showing up with the best of what you have. Your mother knew this. She understood that love isn't measured by perfection, but by the intention behind every gesture, no matter how small. Let me tell you a story. There's a woman named Eleanor, a Sagittarius just like you, who lost her mother at a young age. She struggled with feelings of guilt for many years, constantly wondering if she had been there enough for her mother. One of her greatest regrets was that she never got to tell her mother how much she appreciated her for everything she did. Eleanor spent countless nights lying awake, replaying her mother's last days in her mind, wishing she had said or done more. She cried over missed opportunities, especially moments where she could have expressed gratitude, but she hesitated, thinking there would always be time for it later. It wasn't until Eleanor spoke with a spiritual healer that she understood the truth. The healer helped her see that her mother never needed perfection. She needed Eleanor to be present. It was never about what she said or didn't say. It was about the bond they shared, the unspoken understanding between them. Eleanor's mother knew how much she loved her. The small moments, the shared glances, the laughter, and the quiet companionship. They were the true expressions of love. Perfection had no place there. It was about being real, being authentic. This is the same truth for you, Sagittarius. Your mother knew the depth of your love, even in the moments when you thought you didn't do enough. She understood your heart, the way it overflowed with love, even when words failed or when actions seemed inadequate. What you might see as missed opportunities were actually opportunities to show love in a way that was uniquely yours. Through presence, through genuine care, through your quiet strength. The guilt you carry arises from the false belief that love must be perfect. But that's simply not the case. Your mother's love for you wasn't based on perfection, nor was yours for her. It was based on the bond you shared, a bond that transcended any imperfections. She never expected you to always say or do the right thing. She simply wanted your love, your presence, and your authenticity. Think back on the moments you shared with her. Was it the grand gestures or the perfect words that truly mattered? Or was it the way you made each other feel seen, heard, and loved? I imagine it was the small moments, the time spent together, the quiet gestures, the unspoken words of comfort. Those are the moments that stay with us, not the mistakes or regrets. Your mother felt your love in the moments when you just showed up, even when things weren't perfect. Your mother never expected you to be flawless. She loved you for who you were, imperfect, yet deeply caring. She appreciated the person you are, flaws and all, because love doesn't need perfection. It needs presence, it needs sincerity, and it needs authenticity. And that is what you gave her. The guilt that haunts you comes from a misconception that you needed to be perfect to be loved. But that is not true. Love is not about perfection. It is about realness. It is about being who you are, showing up in the ways that you can. You showed up for your mother in the best way you knew how, and that was more than enough. I want to ask you, Sagittarius, what if you could release these unanswered questions? What if you could stop asking yourself if you could have been better or done more? The reality is that you were there for your mother in the ways that mattered most. Through your presence, your love, your heart. And that was all she ever needed. Guilt will continue to hold you in the past if you let it. It will keep you searching for answers that don't exist. So today I invite you to release it. Let go of the belief that you could have done more. You did enough. Your love was always enough, and your mother knew that. Now it's time for you to understand it too. Let go of the questions that don't serve you and embrace the truth. You gave her your best, and that was more than enough. Gate 2. Letting go of guilt. Your mother doesn't want you to carry this burden. Sagittarius, one of the most profound realizations you can have in your journey of healing is that your mother would never want you to carry the burden of guilt. The weight of guilt that so often accompanies loss can be overwhelming, especially when it feels like there were things left unsaid, things undone. You may feel that you didn't do enough for her, or that there were missed moments where you could have shown her more love. But the truth is that your mother would never have wanted you to be burdened by guilt. We often carry guilt because we think that love requires perfection. We think that if we loved someone enough, we would have done everything right. But in reality, love was never about perfection, Sagittarius. It was about presence, about showing up with sincerity and heart, and that is exactly what you gave your mother. She didn't need you to be perfect, and she didn't need every moment to be flawless. What she needed was your love, your care, and your authenticity. And you gave her that. It's essential to understand that guilt arises from a belief that we are responsible for more than we could have reasonably done. Grief, especially after losing a mother, often carries with it the belief that we failed in some way. We think we didn't do enough, that there was something we missed, something we could have said or done to make things better. But this belief, Sagittarius, is a lie. It's a story that the mind tells us to keep us stuck in the past, to keep us tethered to something we can't change. Your mother knew that you loved her, deeply and fully, and she never wanted you to carry the weight of guilt after her passing. In fact, if she were here, she would want nothing more than for you to release that burden and to live a life of peace, joy, and freedom. She wouldn't want you to be chained to regret or sorrow. She would want you to honor her memory by living fully, by stepping into your own life with love, and without the heavy load of guilt that so often holds us back. I want to share with you another story, a story that might resonate with your journey. It's about a woman named Claire, a Sagittarius who had struggled with guilt after the passing of her mother. She spent years carrying the weight of things she felt she hadn't done, words she hadn't spoken, moments she hadn't shared. She kept telling herself that if only she had been more present, if only she had been more vocal with her love, things would have been different. But one day, as she was talking to a friend, something clicked. Her friend gently reminded her that love was never about perfection. Her mother, just like yours, never needed Claire to do everything right. What mattered most was that Claire had been there, that she had shown up, that she had loved her mother in the best way she knew how. Her mother never needed perfection. She needed Claire's heart, and Claire gave that to her. That conversation helped Claire realize that the guilt she was carrying was not hers to bear. It was rooted in a false belief that she was responsible for things that were simply beyond her control. And once Claire released that guilt, she began to live her life again. She started to feel a lightness in her heart, a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. You too can release this guilt, Sagittarius. You can let go of the belief that you should have done more. Your mother did not expect you to be perfect. She expected you to love her, to be present with her, and to show up with an open heart. And you did that. That is what she wanted, and that is what she received. It is time for you to let go of the burden that guilt places on your soul. It's time to release it and move forward with the love and peace that she always wanted you to experience. You do not need to carry guilt for things that can't be undone. You do not need to carry guilt for things that were never meant to be fixed. What matters is that you loved her, that you did your best, and that you are still honoring her by continuing to live with an open heart. Releasing guilt is not about forgetting. It's not about dismissing the loss or pretending that it didn't hurt. It's about acknowledging that the love you shared was real and powerful, and that love, even in its imperfection, was enough. Your mother would never want you to be weighed down by the what-ifs and the could-have-beens. She would want you to live fully, to embrace the love you gave her, and to step into the next phase of your life with the freedom to be at peace with yourself. So today, Sagittarius, I invite you to release that burden. Lay down the guilt that has been holding you back. Your mother would never have wanted you to carry that weight. Let it go, and honor her memory by living fully and freely. You have everything within you to move forward with love and peace, and that is exactly what your mother would have wished for you. Gate 3. Accepting that love is enough. Your mother only needed your presence, not perfection. Sagittarius, one of the most profound lessons you can learn in your healing journey is that love is not about perfection. It never was. Your mother did not need you to be flawless. She did not need grand gestures or words that were perfectly timed. What she needed was your presence. She needed your heart, your authenticity, your genuine love. And that, Sagittarius, was always enough. Grief often brings with it the overwhelming feeling that we should have done more, said more, been more. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that our love is measured by our actions and words, by how well we perform, by how perfectly we show up. But that's not the truth, and it was never the truth with your mother. In fact, she loved you not because you were perfect, but because you were you. Think about the moments you shared with your mother. What stands out to you? Was it the times when everything seemed flawless? Or was it the moments of raw, real connection, the quiet times when you were just there with her, fully present in the moment? Maybe it was the way you comforted her without needing to say a word. Or how you showed up for her even when you didn't have all the answers. Those moments were what truly mattered. Those moments were enough. I know it can feel as if we must justify our love. We think that if we loved someone enough, we would have said everything we needed to, we would have done everything in our power to make sure they felt loved. But love is not about checking off a list of actions or words. Love is about the heart behind the actions, the intention behind the words. And your intention, Sagittarius, was always to love your mother as best as you could. Even in moments of doubt, you loved her with all your heart, and that love was more than enough. There is a story I want to share with you that might resonate. It's about a woman named Lily, a Sagittarius who lost her mother when she was still very young. For years, Lily carried the burden of guilt, believing that she hadn't done enough for her mother, that she could have been a better daughter. She believed that if she had just been more present, more vocal in her love, things would have been different. She often wondered if her mother knew how much she truly loved her. One day, Lily decided to visit a therapist to work through her feelings of guilt. The therapist, a wise soul who understood the depth of her pain, gently asked her, "What do you think your mother would say if she were here right now?" Lily paused and reflected, then responded, "She would probably tell me that I did the best I could, that my love was enough." The therapist smiled and said, "Exactly. Your mother never needed you to be perfect. She loved you for your heart, for the ways you loved her. Imperfectly but deeply." This conversation was a turning point for Lily. She realized that her mother never expected her to be flawless, and that the love she gave her mother was always enough. Lily had been so caught up in believing that she needed to be perfect, that she missed the simple truth. Her love had always been enough because it came from a place of sincerity, from a place of authenticity. Sagittarius, this same truth applies to you. Your mother did not need you to be perfect. She needed you to be real. She needed you to show up with love, with heart, and with honesty. That was enough. It always was. Let me ask you, Sagittarius, when you look back on the times you spent with your mother, do you see all the ways you showed her love? Even in the small, imperfect moments? Do you see how your presence, your care, and your authenticity were enough? Your mother knew the depths of your love, and she never expected anything more than that. You didn't need to do everything right to prove your love to her. You simply needed to show up with an open heart, and that's exactly what you did. The truth is that love does not require perfection. It requires presence. It requires the willingness to show up, to be vulnerable, and to offer your heart in whatever way you can. Love is in the moments when words aren't enough, in the small acts of kindness, in the shared silences that speak volumes. Your love for your mother was never about grand gestures or perfect words. It was about the connection you shared, the bond that transcended imperfections. And that bond was more than enough. You might still feel deep down that you should have done more. Maybe you think that if you had been more present, more aware, or more vocal about your love, things would have been different. But that is a misconception, Sagittarius. Your mother's love for you was not conditional upon your actions being perfect. She loved you for you. Imperfect, real, and full of heart. I want you to think about something very important now. What if you could let go of the belief that your love had to be perfect? What if you could accept that your love, no matter how imperfectly it was expressed, was enough? The guilt that weighs you down stems from the belief that you could have been more, done more, but that belief is not serving you. It is time to release it. Your love was always enough. Your presence was always enough. You as you are were enough. And when you release the guilt that tells you otherwise, you begin to embrace the truth that love, in its simplest and purest form, does not require perfection. It only requires the willingness to show up in love with all your heart. Let this truth sink in, Sagittarius. You were always enough for your mother. Your love, as imperfect and human as it was perfect in her eyes. And it's time for you to see that too. You did your best, and that is enough. Let go of the idea that you needed to do more. Your love was enough. Your presence was enough. And now you are free to release the burden of guilt and step into a future filled with peace and acceptance. Gate 4. Forgiving yourself, learning to let go of guilt and live freely. Sagittarius, perhaps the hardest yet most liberating step in your healing journey is learning to forgive yourself. The weight of guilt can feel suffocating, as though it has a hold on your heart that you can't shake off. But what if I told you that the path to freedom begins with forgiveness? Not forgiveness of others, but of yourself. Forgiving yourself is not about excusing past mistakes or pretending that you didn't fall short in certain moments. It's not about ignoring the pain of what was left undone. Forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, is about releasing yourself from the emotional chains that keep you bound to regret and sorrow. It's about accepting your human flaws and imperfections and allowing yourself the grace to move forward unburdened. Guilt often convinces us that we must atone for our mistakes, that we must carry the weight of our regrets as if they define us. But Sagittarius, you are not your mistakes. You are not the sum of the times you feel you fell short. You are a complex, beautiful, evolving being deserving of love, compassion, and freedom. You made the best choices you could at the time with the knowledge and understanding you had. And that is enough. You did what you could, and that is all anyone, especially your mother, would ever have asked of you. Imagine for a moment, Sagittarius, the freedom that comes from forgiving yourself. The burden of guilt you carry is not a reflection of who you are. It is a reflection of the expectations you place upon yourself, the impossible standards you hold. But those standards are not set by your mother. They were never meant to be yours. Your mother, from the other side, would want you to see the truth. You were never meant to carry that burden. She loved you for the real you. The you who showed up, who loved with all your heart, who tried your best. Your mistakes were never meant to weigh you down. They were simply part of your human experience. And in those imperfections, your love was made real. When we speak of forgiveness, we often think of it as a gift we give to others. But the most important forgiveness, Sagittarius, is the one we give to ourselves. You cannot move forward while carrying the weight of guilt. It will keep you stuck in the past, tethered to old pain. Forgiveness, however, is a key that unlocks the door to a future filled with peace, clarity, and emotional freedom. There's a story I want to share with you about a woman named Isabella. She too was a Sagittarius, and she struggled with guilt for years after her mother's passing. Isabella carried the belief that she had failed her mother in some way, that there were things left unsaid and opportunities missed. She was consumed with self-blame, wondering if she could have done more, been more. It wasn't until a close friend of hers, seeing the weight Isabella carried, said something that forever changed her path. Her friend gently said, "Isabella, your mother would not want you to carry this burden. She loved you for exactly who you were, and the love you gave her was enough. It always was. You need to forgive yourself so you can live the life she always wanted for you. One of peace, joy, and freedom." Those words were like a light bulb turning on for Isabella. She realized that her mother never expected perfection from her, just as she didn't expect it from herself. The guilt she carried was rooted in a false belief that if she hadn't made mistakes, if she had been perfect, her mother would have been happier. But the truth was, her mother loved her regardless of those imperfections. Her mother wanted her to forgive herself, to release the weight of guilt, and to step into a life where love, not regret, defined her journey. Sagittarius, your journey too begins with forgiveness. It begins with releasing the past and acknowledging that you did your best, and that your mother, from wherever she is now, sees your love for what it was, a genuine expression of the deepest parts of your heart. You cannot keep living with the emotional chains of guilt. To forgive yourself is to let go of that weight and to finally be free. Think about how you would treat a loved one who is struggling with guilt. Would you hold them to impossible standards, or would you encourage them to forgive themselves and to live with compassion for their flaws? You would likely tell them, as I am telling you now, that they are worthy of love, that their mistakes do not define them, and that they are deserving of peace. That same compassion, Sagittarius, must be extended to yourself. It is time for you to stop holding yourself captive with the false narrative that your mistakes and imperfections are unforgivable. You are human, and being human means learning, growing, and sometimes stumbling along the way. Forgiving yourself means giving yourself the grace to move forward, to live a life full of joy, and to honor your mother's memory not through regret, but through living fully and freely. When you forgive yourself, you allow yourself to heal. You release the past and you create the space for peace, light, and love to flow through your life once again. You honor your mother's love for you by embracing your own worth and moving forward with an open heart. Your mistakes do not define you, Sagittarius, but your capacity to love and forgive will shape the beautiful life that lies ahead. Now is the time to let go of guilt. Now is the time to forgive yourself. And as you do, know that your mother is there with you, encouraging you, loving you, and urging you to live the life you deserve, one of peace, one of freedom, and one filled with the love she always knew you were capable of. Conclusion: embracing peace and freedom, stepping into a new space of healing. Sagittarius, as you step into the space of self-forgiveness, you are beginning a new chapter of your life, one where guilt no longer holds you back, and where peace, love, and freedom become your guiding forces. You have traveled through the pain, the questions, and the heavy burden of guilt, and now you stand at the threshold of healing. The guilt you once carried has been released, and in its place, there is room for the peace you've always deserved. Letting go of guilt is not a one-time event. It is a process. It's a journey that requires patience and self-compassion. As you move forward, you will have moments where the shadows of guilt may try to creep back in, but I encourage you to remember this. You did your best. Your love was always enough. You showed up for your mother in the ways that you could, and that is all she ever needed from you. Perfection was never the goal. Love was. And love, in its truest form, is about being present, being authentic, and offering your heart in whatever way you can. Your mother would not want you to carry the weight of guilt any longer. She would want you to live fully, to honor her memory by embracing the life she always wanted for you. One of joy, peace, and freedom. She loved you for who you were, and she would want you to see yourself with the same compassion and love that she saw you with. By releasing the guilt and stepping into the freedom of self-forgiveness, you are honoring her love and allowing her to continue guiding you from the other side. Now is the time to step into that freedom, Sagittarius. It is time to forgive yourself, to embrace your imperfections, and to live the life you deserve. The journey ahead is one of emotional liberation, of finding peace within yourself, and of living with an open heart. You have carried the burden long enough, and now you are free to walk forward with lightness in your soul and peace in your heart. Take a deep breath, Sagittarius, and feel the weight lift. You are not defined by your mistakes or by the things you think you didn't do. You are defined by your heart, your ability to love, and your willingness to grow. And now, as you step into the space of peace and self-forgiveness, you are free to embrace the love that your mother always wanted for you. To live with joy, to walk in freedom, and to honor the legacy of love that she gave you. You are enough. You always were. And now it is time for you to step into the light of your own truth, knowing that you are worthy of the peace and joy that lie ahead.